Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Feminine Legacy Podcast. This is your host, Jacqueline Hyacinth, and I'm so excited today to bring on a dear guest who is a friend, a colleague, and has also been my ancestral medicine practitioner, Shannon Ledford. Shannon, welcome.
Thank you. I just want to say it was so fun to work together because all of our Italian ancestry, and so
Absolutely.
it's like the ancestors were really excited to work with Jacqueline as well because of we both have this deep rooted Italian ancestry. And so added a particularly fun element to being together.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, yeah, with that said, it was really particularly powerful for me to one, I've been doing ancestral work for a long time, but there's so many different ways, and we'll probably get into that, that we can work with ancestors, whether it's through ancestral consciousness or dealing with at the energy vibrational level. There's a lot here. But
Totally.
when you work with somebody who is of the same origins, meaning ancestry as far as our Italian lineages, there was something very, very sweet. And I purposely chose you. I mean, obviously, my soul chose you. But, but when I was looking at, like, I want to look at this method, and I want to give you space now to talk about that, it was like so clear. Like, you were the one, and we shared this Italian heritage. And although I'm not one who over identifies with heritage
I
because
don't either.
I know we're free souls, I do honor and how exciting it is to be able to like come into the space where there's a shared understanding of like this, like our people.
Well, it's interesting because, yeah, you don't have to overly identify with it, and yet it's part of our blood and bones. So to not identify with it at all also does us this huge disservice, right? And
Agreed.
so it's both. So I think let's start with, yeah, so I am mostly Italian. So I have um, six pairs of great grandparents that immigrated from Italy to the United States. I have three pairs, so six total great grandparents that immigrated from Italy to the United States during the late 1800s, early 1900s, and settled in California, all of them. And then my father's people are English Irish, and
Okay.
they were here a lot longer. Yeah, and they were in the middle of the country for a while and then ended up in California. So,
Mhm.
uh, yeah, there's this interesting thing that started to happen where I felt like my ancestors were sort of tapping me on the shoulder, right? Like, hey, hey.
Mhm.
And to really take the time to dive in and heal my lineages has shifted my life completely. And now I've got two daughters and who are 10 and 3. And to be able to bring that to them and not to have the ancestral realm, the unseen, and anything that was ghosty there be affecting us, it's really awesome. And the support and guidance that I get from my well and elevated ancestors, I didn't know I was missing it until it was through the method brought online for me. And now I've just got this deep and rich relationship with them. And it was life altering.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love it. I couldn't agree more. It is life altering. And there's such a deeper sense of respect for life and
Mm,
right and the maturity that it brings from looking at like what
yeah.
peoples have been through in their lives. And I feel like it sort of moves us out of the self-centeredness into a more unified understanding of like we are coming together. We chose this particular lineage to incarnate into. So it's like, why not know about it? You chose it. So like, why not open up like all the doors and allow
Totally.
all the gifts and the wisdom to be revealed instead of keeping everything so unconscious?
Yes. Well, and I think part of the reason that we keep it so unconscious is because for a lot of us, there's especially those of us of European lineages, it
Mhm.
has been thousands of years often since your people did reverence and maintenance to the ancestors, right? And so that's created this disconnection. And so all of these gifts and blessings aren't flowing to us the way they're meant to because of this disconnection. And then it gets sort of gunky and ghosty and those that are dying on the lineages as they get closer to us, the living, they're not connected with this wise and ancient energy because of the disconnection. And they're turning back towards the living often and pulling energy from them, not out of malice or a malicious way, but because of what they know. So they're turning back towards the living instead of fully orienting towards the ancestral realm and the wise and elevated, those that are already wise and elevated on the lineage, because they can't see and feel them
Mm-hmm.
because there's all this disconnection.
Yeah.
And so that really speaks to, I was trained in ancestral medicine, which was brought about by Daniel Four. So I trained in his program over 5 years ago. So I've been doing the work for 5 years. And the first part of it was to really heal my lineages. And you really, with regard to this method, some things I really like about it are there's a lot of ritual safety to it, because in some ways the ancestors have been sort of a hot topic over the last few years, and
Yeah.
people sort of like fling the door open, and like all of the ghosty energy can also come in from the ancestors. It's just the way you wouldn't leave the front door of your house open to for anyone to come in. You want to be discerning around it. And so this method slows things down and really looks at your four primary lineages to start. So your father's fathers, the grandfather's there, your father's mothers, the grandmother's there, your mother's mothers, the grandmother's there, and your father's mothers. I mean, your mother's fathers, the grandfather's there, right?
Yeah.
And it slows things down. You take an assessment of all four of those lineages, where they are in spirit right now. And then you work with each lineage individually. And the beautiful part about it is you get reconnected with a guide from the wise and elevated part of that lineage that maybe way back.
Mm-hmm.
I have yet to find, I will attest that everyone and every one of those lineages does have this wise and elevated part,
Mm-hmm.
that ancient wellspring of energy that is your birthright to be connected to.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people have to go way back to get to it, and that's okay. Again, for myself and for all the clients that I've worked with, yeah, sometimes it takes some time to go way back, but it's always there. It's eternal.
And they're so happy to
Oh
receive.
my gosh.
Oh my God, it's like a reunion. It
It's
feels,
the number one thing I hear.
yeah,
They're so happy you're here because you've shown up as a catalyst to
yeah.
show interest and to reconnect. And so this guide from this, so if we take your mother's lineage as an example, right? So you bypass any trouble or any of the disconnection, and you go back and you ask a guide to step forward to meet you, a grandmother guide from your lineage. And then there's some questions to make sure that they are of the lineage and,
Mm-hmm.
willing and able to help and well connected to the ones that came before them, and that they feel good and safe to you as their living, grandchild.
Yeah.
And then you get to start a relationship with them. And what they do, the beautiful thing about this too, is that I think so much of the work in the spiritual realm is us really personally doing a lot of heavy lifting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this method creates the relationship and the reconnection. And then these wise and elevated grandmothers, say on your mother's lineage, then put a healing container around the one right after them, all the way down to the last one that's passed on the lineage. And then they help with the healing work.
Mm-hmm.
They do the actual healing. But you've shown up to ask for it, to show your love and interest and desire to be in connection. And it like moves them into action around it in a way that it's a catalyst, really, more than anything. And then during the process, you go in and you connect with them and you learn from them, and you have them check on that healing container. And over time, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, we follow the ancestors. So timing is not
Yeah.
something that is rushed or pushed or agended, just, or
Mm-hmm.
I have no expectations around it, because we really just listen to your people, your wise and elevated ancestors. But what happens is those in the healing container heal and they come out and they join the well ones. And eventually that healing container gets smaller and smaller during the process. The well ones get bigger and bigger. And eventually the last one who's passed on the lineages comes passed on the lineage, like your mother's mother's lineage, that last grandmother, if it was your grandmother was the last one to pass, she comes out and joins the well ones. That healing container goes away. And now you've got this beautiful, different relationship. Even if in this moment you can feel the spirit of your grandmother, when you do this type of healing of the lineage, you then, when you're interacting with her, not only get her wearing the mask of the lineage, but all the grandmothers behind her.
Yummy.
And actually for me, it was really, as I healed my lineages, I had to do some really intentional practice about leaning back into them, remembering that they're there so that I could feel their love and support, because I'd been holding myself up for so long that it was habitual. And
Mm-hmm.
to this day, 5 years, 5+ years later, right? 6 years later, we're going on. There are moments where I have to be like, oh yeah, really lean back into them, really feel them there, because they love you, they support you, they want you to fulfill your destiny, and they want to assist you in that, in the ways in which you're willing to allow them. So that's really your work, right? Your work's around, what are you willing to allow them to assist you with? What are you willing to release over to them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I find I've done a lot of work with them around ancestral rage. And so I found that, like, when something made me really angry and rage would come up, it wouldn't just be my individual rage. It would also click the switch on what I call the ancestral Pandora's box of rage. And so it would just like envelop me, like tsunami me. And as I've worked with them to hand over that ancestral rage that's no longer mine to carry and really never was, but because
Mm-hmm.
of the disconnection ended up in this treasure chest that gets, you
Yeah.
know, clicked. Yeah, it has.
Mm-hmm.
I also really healed birth trauma and loss of children within my lineages, in particular, obviously with my grandmothers when I was pregnant with my second daughter. I mean, in a really intense way that was not available to me before having these ones to hand it over to work, because they know what to do with it. They really do. You have to be willing, though. This is actually what I love about the ancestors. My relationship with them, they are never pushing me, making me do a thing. It's not like that. It's this really collaborative walk. What's up for me? What am I bringing to them? And then I try to bring it without expectations of what they're going to say. Like, do you have support and guidance around a particular thing that's going on in my life, a bigger theme like ancestral rage, whatever it is? And then I have to get real quiet and listen. And then I get to decide. And there are moments when I say to them, that can't possibly be right. That what you're saying is not, no. And they're like, Shannon, you don't have to do a thing. We're not making you do anything. We're offering you this, right?
Yep.
It's beautiful. I'm an autonomous being. I absolutely get to decide.
Mm.
But they've helped my relationship with myself, the way I walk in the world, my relationship with living family. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super beautiful.
Yeah.
And as you probably remember, and it's probably with all of the people. I mean, our leaning back is the primary lesson for us to surrender consistently. And so it's so interesting with ancestral realms because there's something so rooted in bones. Like it's different. I mean, I walk with the Guru lineage, and they're my people,
Yeah.
and and my ancestors are also my people, and they're all together doing the thing to bring me forward, right? It's like there's something though about the flesh and bones because they're closer to us in proximity, right? That it's so much more felt and embodied. So even leaning back, like everybody, you could be like, you have to trust God, it's like, okay, that's a consistent, like leaning back into the unseen, right? But something about leaning back into the ancestors feels a little bit more primal. Like we know they've experienced it, we know they've come before us in flesh and bones, and so they have a particular understanding of what it means to walk on the earth and to be able to lean into that wisdom. And as you said, stay in the sovereignty. Like, we're not talking about giving over authority to anybody, we're talking
Oh
about
no.
finding authority. And likely the reason we have lost authority is because it was lost in the ancestry to begin with, and now we're coming to, right, to bring that in and surmount that. And
They
so
don't want authority over me.
yeah, they don't, mine don't either.
No, not at all.
Yeah, nope. And it's good to know that for those that are, because a lot of people feel a lot of fear around ancestral work because of the ghostiness, right? And also because of what we know has been built up in that separation over thousands of years, like even talking to the dead, relating to the dead, that there's some connotation that it's wrong or scary because you can't see. And the truth is that exists, and it's just as scary to go outside your house and not know who you're talking to in the physical realm. It's relative.
Well, and that's why if you have, so that's really what my work is, right? I help hold my people and I, because they really come online in particular for the work, right? They're online with me all the time, but they with the work, they particularly help me hold the container, right? Um, Holding that ritually safe container so that if one of my clients in a moment does get into the weeds a bit, right? I can help slow it down, bring it out, help titrate what's going on. And yeah, that's important too.
It's
It's
really important.
yeah. And I mean, I love too that it's like I hold the space, and yes, there's this real process to the ancestral medicine that I do, right? And part of the process and structure and technology of it is so that it is a ritually safe space as much as possible, right? And
Agree.
so yeah. Um and so that way when things do bubble up, there's this real held space for it. But I am not, just to be super clear, I am not a conduit between for your relationship between you and your people. I create the space for that to happen and guide it in a way that it can happen in this really beautiful unfolding. But your relationship with your ancestors is absolutely yours. It does not include me.
Yeah.
They often will thank me
Yes.
for holding the space, but beyond that, like and that's what's so beautiful too, right? Like you've got your relationship with yours and I've got my relationship with mine. It's kind of incredible.
It's really incredible. And
Mm-hmm.
really lets you know that everybody here is supported. Everybody here, and we all come from the same things. We all have our different essence and gifts, but it's like to come into that level of understanding and respect. Like when you and I are gathering, yes, you and our souls are gathering, and that's really beautiful. And also our people are with us, and there's a communion that's happening in a field that we are part of opening up and embracing because we're the ones that are saying yes. It's like we call the meeting. My right? My Swami, he used to call himself the pimp. Like he'd be the pimp for the mother, right? He's the one that comes and is like, "Hey, I'm here," and he'll arrange the meeting, And then once the meeting is there, once you come in with your people, it's all you. Like you get to decide, but like you and I sort of brokered the deal. Like, "Hey, look, we've got this here. Can you go get
Well, it's interesting because very often people come to me, their ancestors have been tapping them on the shoulder and nudging them to do a thing.
hmm And do you agree with this too? This is like in my with my clients, for example, some of them are like straight here for the ancestral work. Their ancestors are super present and they're the ones that are going to be guiding the things. And then there's other people who they will never do ancestral work potentially in this life. It's just not a calling for them. And their calling will be something different with spirit, but it's particular. Although I know everybody benefits from it, to be able to feel like karmically, like you and I are here and we needed to do this work, it's a calling. It's not something that like we can
It
just.
is because there's a responsibility, just like when you're in relationships with living, with your living family, with your siblings, with friends in this life.
Mm,
Like there's this way of showing up and being responsible in those relationships. That's not different with the unseen. Like you've shown up with the ancestors, you're in relationship with them. There is a cultivation and a deepening and a relationship there that does have to be tended.
it does. And to
It
just
just does.
acknowledge that even our thoughts, beliefs, actions, the way in which we are walking around in the world is literally a holding of ancestral lineage connection. So we have to wonder what is ours and what is not ours. And until you dive into the realms and understand that, like, oh, this, I don't, wow, I can take this off my back. You'll take this back. Awesome.
Here you
Here's the
go.
betrayal. I'm gonna give that heartbreak back. All the
But
defense.
there's so many times when whatever you're holding or whatever mechanism that you're playing out has been a survival mechanism at some point along the lineage, and even maybe in your living, in your lifetime, this time in your
Yeah.
lived experience. And so yeah, there has to be this, I mean, it's a literal like this opening of the hands and releasing back. It really is.
It is.
And releasing responsibilities to them that are, it's a very, it's fascinating because there's even I work with, so one of the clients I'm working with recently is really working with like releasing responsibility for her parents back to the ancestors as her parents are starting to come to that time in their life where they're going to transition.
Yeah.
um and release responsibility doesn't mean that you then leave the living person and don't talk to them again. It's an energetic shift in your relationship with the living person. And it works with our kids too.
I found it worked with everything, right? So
Yeah.
everything from the unseen world that we're walking around with, it just starts to lighten up how we are interacting and interfacing in our relationships with people in the living world, right? Our family units, the ways in which we're, operating at work and communicating with family and friends. All of that is related to the unseen realms of how peoples before us related.
It's affecting you whether you want to acknowledge it or not.
Word.
End of story.
It
It
is.
just is. And until I started to do this, I didn't realize how much it was. And it's the ancestors in particular, it feels like, because they're so close to you. They live in your blood and bones, and they're just like right here. And so, yeah, getting in relationship with them and clearing the sort of ghosty fog around that. I mean, I talk about it a lot being like, in relation to, in particular, interacting with living family. Like the dance floor was this big and there were a few steps and you just kept doing them over and over, right?
Yeah.
When I worked with my lineages and my lineages got healed, it lifted a fog around this dance floor and made me realize the dance floor is like this big.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you won't do those old steps, but it does mean that you have access to all of these additional steps to choose from that you didn't really realize were there.
Yeah.
And so that's in one, some ways, that's everything. Just
It is.
having access to doing it potentially differently. And at least my experience of it is, and sometimes we go back to this little dance floor and do the steps, and there's a little bit of habitual stuff there. And then maybe we release some stuff and we do that less often. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how it plays out or unfolds for everyone. It's different.
For me, one of the main themes of my personal experience was this feeling of like, it's not my fault,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like, everything that I'm moving through in my own life, the habitual patterns, all the things, it's not that I wasn't accepting responsibility. It was where I had accepted responsibility that wasn't mine. The responsibility was to acknowledge it, right? And to be willing to part with it. That was the responsibility. But if you don't know until you are sitting with somebody who knows, right? An ancestral practitioner, somebody who's working with lineage, you don't know. And so, this overwhelming feeling that so many women, myself and my clients, come with this burden of like guilt and shame and like the
Mm,
heaviness, the rage, as you spoke about, that it has been inherited, mama. Like it's not
totally.
it's not just your fault. Like you didn't do the thing. It's just something that has been precipitated through a lineage. So that for me was a big wake up call and gave me like, yeah, it gave my heart room to be like, oh.
And the beauty is that as we heal it, we then aren't handing those burdens in the same way onto our children.
Mhm.
I mean,
Just you.
my 10-year-old in particular has a very distinct relationship with the ancestors. She talks to them. She has a relationship with them that I've helped her cultivate, but is really hers,
Yeah.
right? I can remember her, I was starting to do this work, um, and she was 4, and we were on our way to preschool, and she says to me, "You know, Mama, the ancestors love me best." And I said, "Oh, tell me more." And she goes, "Well, they come with me to school. I don't talk to them there, but they love me best." And I said, they do love you. You are their granddaughter. Excellent. End of conversation. We get to preschool. She goes to preschool. She gets in the car that afternoon and she says to me, "Mama, you know what? Some of the ancestors love you best." And I said to her, "You know what, babe? I think that there are ancestors on our lineages that can best help you where you are in your life right now. So they're with close to you. And there's some that can help me best for where I am in my life right now. And they come closer to me. But I think they probably love us in the same capacity, in the same way." Yeah. End of conversation. Right. And I just thought I've had just a couple of moments where, and that was one of them where I thought, oh yeah, the work I'm doing is important for my family.
It's
And so
really
actually,
beautiful work.
yeah, it is. And the other one was actually on the other side of things. So my mom passed in 2019 from Alzheimer's, and she had been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's and had lived for 9 years with that diagnosis. And so at the last 6 months of her life, she was in a memory care unit because her care was at a level where we needed to do that. And so I had become friends with the woman who ran this facility, Susan, who Susan was in her 70s. She'd been in elder care for 40 plus years.
Okay.
So when my mom passed in February 2019, Susan came to me and she said, "Shannon, I've been doing this a long time. And in all my years, I've never seen anyone die with their eyes open and a smile on their face the way your mother did." And I knew that she'd been picked up by her people because there was no disconnection. I knew she'd been picked up.
Mm.
They had shared with me a visual that her grandmothers were going to create and a sound that her grandfathers were going to create to help orient her towards them in this, what can be a really disorienting transition. And she got picked up. And it was like, oh yeah, I did that. Like
Mm.
I didn't do that, but
Oh
I
no.
created the possibility of that by showing up with my people and tending to this relationship. And so while it's benefiting now, it's also really benefiting at that point, you know?
It is.
And it just, those two like examples of like, oh, it's going to benefit my daughter all through her life. She's talking to me about this at 4 and continues at 10 to like pray to them at night, right, and have conversations with them. And then it benefited my mother, who when I started this work was in and out of a lucid state, right? So she never really got to fully um, comprehend in her living body what I was doing. She would have loved it though. I mean, this is her thing. Like, this is a woman who was plying us with echinacea 45 years ago, right? And like had an acupuncturist, and in a time when that was not a thing. It was not accepted the way it is now. Um, and that I could gift my mom that, and my daughters that,
Mm.
and myself day to day. I mean,
Yeah.
it just doesn't get better than that. So like when you were asking me, as I was, like sending in a bio or whatever, and you're like, well, what's your sort of title? And it was like, oh, I'm a mother. I'm
Yeah.
a mother first right now.
My bio too is the same thing, mother. It's
I am such a mother. And there's such a time when I would not have embraced that in such a full way. It's bringing on the divine mother energy for me and all the things. But I'm a mother and I'm an ancestral medicine practitioner, right? And I've gotten into some quantum energy stuff, whatever. But at my core, I'm a mother. And I'm not the mother my mother was.
mm, yeah.
And she was an amazing mother. And sometimes I'm like, wow, I wish she was around in body so that I could like some of hers would rub off on me while I'm raising my girls, right? It's a very interesting thing. I mean, I get her in the ancestral realm, and we commune there, but there is a difference.
There is a difference.
There is a difference. There are still moments where I'm like, damn, I miss my mom.
Yeah. Same with my dad, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Even being in this really beautiful relationship with her in this way, yeah,
Mm, yeah.
all of it. So yeah, I mean,
It's such a, I feel like it's really, for me personally, has been really fulfilling, like really rich and juicy. And as somebody who has played around in a lot of terrain and had to really navigate for my own learning and my work with others around ghosty terrain, and like it's all power for the course, and it's not always that way, and it's so magical. And when I say magical, I just mean like the way the threads come together that becomes so beautiful when you're guided to do a thing, or when you're supported to prepare something, or ritualize something, or just do something, and then you see it come back, and you finish doing a healing, and then your son calls you and is like, what just happened, or like there's so much that is just like popping off. What I want to lean into something with you around
mhm.
Italians, because
Yep.
this was one, it was all of our people's way, no matter what skin, no matter what body you're in, that this is ancestral reverence and communication with the living dead is for humans. It doesn't matter what color spacesuit you're in. However,
Because we all have them,
we all
the
have,
ancestors.
but particularly around Italian ancestry, I mean, we still see it in our culture. Walls, you walk into somebody's house, right? And, who are kind of old school Italian, and are there's the living dead are like all over the walls like a shrine. And so there's just has been this knowing that in our Italian heritage, like this is not far fetched for us. Like the gifts are still like present, even though our modern society has like tried to cut it off. Like there's some deep medicine in the
Yeah.
Italian, right?
Yeah, and I think where the deep disconnection, and particularly for Italians, was with the Catholic Church, right? Because it started to create this this self-distrust. And
Yes.
as we start as our ancestors started to distrust themselves, as they handed over, just the way I'm talking about, like, I am not a conduit or a medium between you and your people. There was this time when our people were told, and almost continue to be told in some ways, right? That the a priest holds the keys to the kingdom or to the relationship with God. that colored how we interact,
Yeah.
how we trust ourselves, how we trust our interaction with the unseen, and needing an authority to help us with that.
Yeah.
That's why I want to be that's why I made it really clear. It's like, I am not the authority to this. I'm helping create a safe space for you to reconnect and help heal what's going on with your people. And we're following your people, and your relationship is with them. And I'm just here to help you reconnect, and then and to help you cultivate it some, but it's your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I it's a healing of that, particularly for our Italian brethren.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you though, um, Italians tend, those of Italian lineage tend not to gravitate towards this work. And I mean, I've thought about it a lot, and I think that's part of that equation. That's part of the variables of that.
Yeah,
And yet you're so right. They feel it so strongly.
for sure. For sure.
And if some of that disconnection can get healed up, they're going to feel it in a way that's like so strong. Like those gifts and blessings are going to just
Yeah.
flow and whew.
Like you think about the loyalty to family and particularly the
Mhm.
indoctrination. I mean, not that there can be good and bad around that spectrum, right? There's a lot of
Right.
codependency and a lot of confusion, but the way that Italians have been really strengthened in this like loyalty to family, family, family. Come on, so it's so
La familia.
yeah, and I think also too with that Catholic Church interruption, that interference, that's what it was. It like interrupted.
Static.
It is. And it created all this noise. And so they have all this relationship to family. And now I think so many are obviously trying to heal in their relationships because we know that things have become so dysfunctional and the relationships of our peoples that were living in Italy. I know you've spent time in Italy and I've lived there. There's a lot going on there. And then our American cultural dynamics, right? Of like family. There's a lot culturally.
There is.
So that interference, but like there is a deep call. The reason that Italians were like so elected to be Catholic is because of the power of ritual, and there is a calling inside to be, ritualist. The Catholic
For
Church,
sure.
I've got my feelings about it, but it's where you can work with saints. It's where you can light your candles and do some magic under the guise of religion, right? So even though it's not the next best thing, a lot of Italians are called into that particular range also because they get to sort of bring some of their
Well,
ancestral ways into that house.
the mysticism is there. There's just layers on top of it.
For sure.
The
Sure.
the yeah, the mysticism of Catholicism is alive and well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think particularly as women, we get like pulled towards it,
Yes.
but then there's these layers and the static that doesn't quite make sense. And then maybe we push away. And so there's an interesting push pull around it.
Mm. So I think
Yeah.
I'm going to take a deep breath and invite all of the audience, no matter what ancestral suit you're wearing, but particularly a calling to the Italian brothers and sisters. There is so much, and European descent, all of us, because even in this modern day and age, we still like to like idolize and have this idea that people of color are more connected to their ancestry, and that's actually not true. That's not my experience. With all of the communities and friends that I have journeyed with, all of us have been equally cut off from what is true and what is, you know, what
By
is
our modern world.
by our modern world. So it's just like, let's move that phenomena out that like somehow Europeans are like these lost children, that like not the case. We're not lost children, and nobody's broken here. But so like really reconnecting to that surge of power for everybody in your lineages. It's for you, it's there for you, and it's your birthright.
It is your birthright. I'm going to talk about that a lot. It is your birthright.
Yeah.
It's your birthright to be connected to your wise and elevated ancestors. It's your birthright to have those gifts and blessings flow to you. They're
Amen.
meant for you.
Yes. Yes.
They're meant for you, and they're meant for your children.
Yes. And we cannot do lineage healing and expect things for those that are even, I'm grateful for those that are stepping into like more higher consciousness in their parenting and like wanting to transform lineage, but it doesn't work one way. So it can't, in other words, it can't, if all of this is pouring down towards you can't just work forward. Like there's no time and space as a soul, as a spiritual being. So we really need to open up the bandwidth behind us and in front of us for us to actually instrument change. Because otherwise, you still are in the separation, creating a cubby of like this one mouth that's coming out from you. But then what about the separation that's behind you? It still isn't opening up the collective field to bring forth that like high healing that we're being called to bring forth.
And truthfully, if you're only working forward for a bubble with your children, say, and your grandchildren,
It's limited.
like it's limited and you're likely depleting yourself
Yes. Yeah.
in ways that you may not act. I mean, maybe you are called to do, but what I know now is that for me, there is a better way because
Yeah.
being connected here just helps all of this.
Yes.
And it gets me out of what is a bubble that I've got to hold and whatever to, oh my gosh,
Yes.
so many possibilities.
So many possibilities, so much love.
Yeah.
And to just hone into on this other piece to just around it is like to be loved. Like to really feel yourself being loved. Right? Like that feeling when those lines open and the grandmothers come in. We know that now. Like what it feels like at a very deep level to be like surrounded by these elder hands and hearts to be like, we got you, mama. Like, oh,
So when we were talking about like how I hold it right through the modality that I use, and it's like, oh, you connect with the guide and you ask the questions, and um what you do after that is you ask them for a blessing for you in your life. And I remind my clients to really slow down and open up to receive that blessing.
mm,
And they're often, my clients will get very emotional
yes.
because it's feeling love at a level that you maybe, and acceptance and belonging at levels that we don't, that we think we're experiencing. I'm going to tell you, I thought I was experiencing it that way.
Yeah,
I had a
me too.
really stable, beautiful, loving upbringing
Mm,
with two, kind of amazing parents who, yeah, have their flaws and all those things, but this just created so much more.
yeah. I found also this healing that happened from that space where since you come back into your true belonging and you're not belonging to any particular ideology or any bullshit like we do in the human, like it's like just belonging to life. And this creates and generates this like new level of infrastructure. Your ecosystem shifts, the self-esteem that comes online from feeling this sense of nourishment and love that maybe you're not getting from your parents in physical reality, right? Like the disparity between what I was experiencing in my birth family and what's coming through from the ancestry is like all that judgment, all that stuff, not here. It's not happening. I mean, it is to a certain degree because it's been passed down, but it's not happening towards me, right? From the well ones. And so from that place, there's a great state of reconciliation that can happen within us and creates this space of where we can start to belong to ourselves. And
Oh,
then we stop puppeting around for the world, looking for belonging inside of other people, inside of other groups, inside of something that is not whole and home for us. And so ancestral work really generates a sense of legacy, self-respect, care, authority, sovereignty that is lived and embodied so that we can breathe into the true ecosystem that we were, inherited and incarnated into, so that we can stop engaging in the world in all the ways that are harmful to us.
Yeah, and to everyone around us.
Word. It's big and beautiful.
It
Love
is.
it.
It is. It's big and beautiful. And it's for me, it's become the foundation
Yeah.
that I get to move from. And it's not just a foundation that I stand on, like the ancestors that came before me, but it's a foundation that lives within me and that I walk with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I walk with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that. And I'm really grateful, like, for this particular technology and body of work. And I'm so grateful that I came into that sphere and that had that experience directly and got to share that with you. And I just to like bring it full circle is like to be able to sit with somebody and not do it by yourself, like to be able, because there are all sorts of realms, there's so much happening. So I really appreciate, obviously in my line of work and the things I do around mentorship, and it was so beautiful to sit down with you, right, and for us to
Thank you.
experience and share that together. It's,
Yeah,
yes, you can do it in your living room by yourself, but it's
for sure.
different. and and so having that shared experiencing and having somebody witness and like hold and pull the different threads that you might not be seeing because you're deeply engaged in one piece, and hey, there's something over here that the ancestors are asking you to look at, to have somebody to point that out and create this rounded experience for us to deeply be human in our
Yeah.
spiritual work is so loving. It's so respectful of our experience here and really brings the realms into embodied practice. So,
I mean, even having healed my lineages and having done the work now for a number of years,
mhm,
I and being in relationship with my people on a regular day-to-day basis,
ongoing. Yeah.
yeah, and tending to all of that, there are still I still get with colleagues and have them and we hold space for each other, right? So that we can there is a different thing about being held in a space to go really deep.
Amen.
um yeah, the other space I'm doing it now is we bought this quantum energy wellness bed, so I will lay on the bed being in the quantum field and have relation and like have conversations with my ancestors, and it's a different thing too. It's
Yeah.
fascinating, the way the different things come in and weave together and all of that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's such
um
tangible magic. Like for those that really love the mystical realms, like it
oh,
really is, and it's fun. Like some of it is
oh,
awesome.
it's so fun.
Right?
I
There's
mean,
laughter and like,
there's moments where it's like, I mean, it can feel like very serious work and we're
yeah,
holding a ritual space and we have a technology, and that's all true. But often the ancestors are bringing more joy, more laughter, more,
totally.
I mean, and I often talk about like what made me understand or really, really feel deep in my bones how real this work was or is, was for me and continues to be. Is each lineage shows up so differently, so uniquely.
Yes.
It's not this homogenous thing with like these are the ancestors. No, it's not like that. My mother's people and my father's mother's people show up very, very differently. They are distinct. And then they're distinct from the grandfathers. And then the my great grandfather's lines are distinct from my, I mean, it's each one has its own flavor. So
It's
distinct.
it's so distinct and so fun, and it just
Which
reminds
only
me,
makes sense, but
yeah,
when you really like
yes,
flush it out, man, it's a kick.
it is. It totally is. I remember so well, like being in that space with you and then just feeling like how the ancestors, my mother's people, they just felt like water. It was like so much water, so much liquid light. Like and my father's people, my grandmother's there, so fiery, like just an entirely different elemental expression. And both of them, like, I'm part of that, right? And then how the grandfathers came through, like, it's so powerful, y'all. For anybody who is listening to this, truly, it's a celebration of our birthright and life, and it is worthy of your time. And so, Shannon,
Yeah, and it hits those threads within you. It like twangs them and like resonates through you. Like you get in a relationship with those fiery grandmothers, and it like twangs a couple of threads in you, and it like reverberates through your being. It's awesome.
it's
Yeah,
really awesome. It really is. So, tell everybody how they can reach you to work with you,
sure.
drop into the ancestries with you.
Yeah, I'd love that. So you can get all the information about me at shannonledford.com. And the way it normally works is our first session would be 90 minutes, and then sessions after that are 60 minutes. I'm going to offer for a first session, a first 90-minute session, $35 off. So it makes it $100 with the code Legacy24. And that'll be good through the end of June of 2024. And if you miss that, just email me and we'll see what we can do. And then the other thing going on is that quantum energy wellness bed. And so that's at AshevilleQuantumWholeness.com. And we do in-person sessions here in Asheville, North Carolina, and then distance sessions. So
Awesome.
that's what's sort of bubbling up and really alive for me right now.
I love that. I'll put, of course, all the information in the show notes so that folks can get in touch with you.
Thank
And
you.
Shannon, I'm really grateful. Thank you so much for, yeah, for being part of this ancestral rebirthing on the planet. It's such really beautiful work. And I'm
Thank you so much for having me today. And actually, it was so fun to relive with you what a beautiful time we had together healing your lineages. And it's been a couple of years, so I hadn't, it's been 3 years because I was pregnant with a little one. Um, and so, yeah, it was really fun for me to revisit that with you today. So I just so appreciate it.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad that we get to do this. So, to our listeners, thank you so much, and bye for now. Let me hit